for the audience that doesn't know you, if you don't mind taking a minute or two and just kind of give your background, how you went about, and then what all of a sudden in 2008 when you got that call, walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So long story short, I grew up as a blue-collar kid in South Florida. After high school, I attended the University of Miami. I studied microbiology, immunology, and parasitology, not parapsychology, the study of parasites, so microorganisms. And after that, I joined the Army and went into military intelligence and did some support to special operations. And from there, I was recruited into a very specialized program within the government. It was a civilian program that's still basically like a civilian soldier, where I was a special agent and basically focused on national security crimes, so terrorism, espionage, things like that. Spent early part of my years in Latin America doing counterinsurgencies and counter-narcotics and things like that, and supporting some other three-letter agencies down there, counter-guerrilla operations. And then after 9/11, found myself over on the other side of the globe. Focused a lot of my efforts in places like Afghanistan and the Middle East, this time focusing on things like Hezbollah and other organizations, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and things like that.
How much experience do you have with them, with Hezbollah, with Al-Qaeda? How much interaction experience, like close up?
That was our job. We recruited sources. We were, using them as spies.
Okay, we'll come back to that. We'll
Sure.
come back. That's good to know.
So then probably after 4 or 5 of these trips over there, my wife finally said, "Look, I'm concerned you're not going to come back. You're really rolling the dice here, and you're taking a lot of chances." And so I came back, took a supervisory position, started running investigations back in Washington, D.C., and from there spent some time with other three-letter agencies and the Director of National Intelligence. And in 2008, I was asked to come back to the Pentagon. At the time, I was working over by the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, which is somewhat close to CIA's headquarters. But the commute was killing me. And we raised our 2 daughters and our family on a little island called Kent Island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay because I didn't want to raise them in a big urban area like D.C. So my commute was 3 hours each way. Sometimes it was not uncommon for me to spend more time in the car than I was at the office. So in 2008, I was asked to come back to the Pentagon and start a program to help integrate national level intelligence, with local law enforcement. After 9/11, we realized that we, as a national security apparatus, we weren't sharing threat-related information very well with local law enforcement. So my job was to fix that. And it was shortly thereafter that some people visited me in my office, and after several meetings, asked me to be part of their organization. Now, what that organization was at the time, I had no idea. But they were cleared. They had the blue IC badge like I had, and they had all the clearances. And finally, one day I met their boss, and that's when I learned about the U.S. government's UFO investigation. And by the way, we weren't the only show in town. There was a long history of the U.S. government being involved in investigating. We call them now UAP, but in the vernacular, it's UFOs.
Now, at the time, is that a publicly known organization or it's underground that no one knows about?
It was not publicly known at all.
So
No.
you're talking about the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program? Is that the one?
Correct, ATIP. And in fact, there was a larger umbrella called OSAP, and then there was some evolution over time where the focus went from OSAP to really kind of more pinpoint focused, which was ATIP. So ATIP was looking pretty much at the nuts and bolts of UAP interactions with U.S. government assets. So think of military aircraft, military installations, other type of research centers that belong to the U.S. government, and how UAP were interacting in and around those areas.
Okay, so is this the one that Harry Reid raised $22 million to start? This is the one?
That's correct. That's correct.
So what prompted him to want to do this? Like, normally somebody doesn't just wake up and say, guys, we have to start this thing and I want to start recruiting certain people. Let's go raise $22 million to investigate what? What prompted his motive?
Right. So it wasn't just Harry Reid. A lot of people think this was some sort of wild goose chase by Senator Harry Reid. It wasn't. This was a bipartisan effort. It was also Senator Ted Stevens and from Alaska, who was a Republican, and Senator Inouye from Hawaii. And on top of that, you had also John Glenn as well, former astronaut John Glenn. And they had their own experiences with UAP. So, for example, Stevens actually during war had seen a UAP, and also Harry Reid had indicated that he had several, if you will, run-ins with UAP himself when he was younger. And so,
when he got younger.
When he was younger.
You're not talking about the time he got a black eye. That wasn't a UAP. That's a different story.
It probably felt like a UAP crashing into him.
I'm just trying to make sure we don't want stories to be. Yeah. But go ahead. When he was younger.
Yeah. And so there's always been an interest by these individuals in Congress to get to the bottom of this. There was also a report which I heard directly from the former senator, where he was accidentally read onto the program at one point, to the ongoing government's UFO program, and he was so incensed that when they tried to read him off and say, "Oh, there was a mistake. We shouldn't have told you about this," he got very mad, and this was one of the many reasons why he got involved. There was also several individuals in the Pentagon at the time who were also very concerned about UAP. One of them was actually the original director for OSAP. Dr. James Lukatsky. James Lukatsky was probably, in my opinion anyways, the world's premier rocket scientist. This is an individual who epitomizes what it means to be a rocket scientist for the U.S. government. He could tell you the burn rate of a first-stage solid rocket booster motor. He could tell you the trajectory and reentry velocity of, let's say, a MIRV, multiple reentry vehicle coming in from low Earth orbit. The guy was just a wealth of information.
Skinwalkers at the Pentagon? That's who you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's James Lukatsky, and there were several others that were part of this effort. And I can happy to talk to you about them. But
what was Harry Reid's interaction when he was a kid?
I don't know. He never shared that with me.
But he did say that he did have something.
He shared that with me and a couple others. Yeah,
got it. So their motive is it almost personal? Like, look, I think something's going on. Let's find out, and let's put a program here. Or is it because Harry is in Nevada, right? And Area 51 is in Nevada. Now, the other fellow you're talking about is from Hawaii, right? And then Glenn. So it's not like everything is Nevada-based. Did any of his motives of wanting to do this because there was Area 51 in Nevada or no?
Well, I think that the real impetus was the fact that he was aware there were U.S. military encounters going on with these UAP. There's a real national security issue here, right? You have these vehicles, let's call them vehicles, that have the ability to fly unimpeded, unchallenged into controlled U.S. airspace over sensitive military installations, and potentially even interfere with our nuclear equities, our nuclear capabilities. So there was a big concern on behalf of the government, both in the intelligence community and the Department of Defense. In some cases, we had almost near collisions with these things. In fact, if you talk to some of the fighter pilots, they'll relay to you, they'll tell you where some of these vehicles have come so close to a combat formation that they've actually split the air formation right down the middle. So that's close, right? You're talking, 15 feet maybe? So there was a air safety issue as well, and it became almost like the worst kept secret in the Pentagon. It was happening so often, especially with a lot of our nuclear carrier strike groups, that people on the ship were literally using their phones to take pictures and videos of these things. So something had to be done. And I think from that perspective, I can't really talk much about the Skinwalker Ranch because my focus was more on the ATIP, the military aspect of this. But there was significant amount of data to suggest that, there's something there, because it's not just eyewitness testimony, right? It's not like grandma seeing some lights in the backyard. We're talking about trained observers that are trained to recognize a silhouette at 10 miles away and determine, is it an Su-22? Is it a MiG-25? Is it an F-16? And identify friend or foe. Do I kill it or do I save it, right? Within a second. This is how good these pilots are. And they're Top Gun trained. Like literally people watch the movie Top Gun. Well, these are the real Top Gun pilots. And not only are they seeing these craft that outperform anything that they have in their inventory, but it's also being further substantiated by gun camera footage and FLIR footage from a pod, forward-looking infrared footage. And, oh, by the way, it's also being corroborated by radar signature and radar returns from airborne radar, seaborne and ground-based radar systems. So you have this menagerie, if you will, or this collection of sensor capabilities, all reporting the same incident at the same time, at the same location, under the same circumstances, right? So now put that on the backdrop of where I come from, being a former special agent in counterintelligence. If I was providing this information to a jury, for example, we're well beyond reasonable doubt at this point. I mean, this is the jury would have to convict because the information is so compelling. I mean, these are the same collection sensor systems that we use to prosecute and win wars. And when you see these technologies that are coming into our controlled U.S. airspace, and there's really not a darn thing we can do about it, that's a problem. That's a real national security issue. Forget about tinfoil hats and Elvis on the mothership and all that other nonsense. We're talking a real national security. Imagine if one of these things had a Russian star on the tail or a North Korean tail number, right? It would be on the front page of every newspaper. But because these things didn't even have a tail, no rudder, no wings, no ailerons, no control surfaces, not even a cockpit, it was crickets. Nobody wanted to say anything. So you can think about this from a national security perspective, right? You go to an airport today or to a train station, you always hear over the announcements, if you see something suspicious, say something. And yet it was the exact opposite for our own men and women in uniform in the military when these things were coming up close and personal to their aircraft or over our facilities. Nobody wanted to say anything. It was crickets. And so I think there was a recognition by the senators at the time that something had to be done. And in fact, it's the same reason now, it's the same impetus why Congress now is involved in this topic, because they're concerned. They've heard from the whistleblowers. They've heard from the pilots. They have received some of the briefings. It's real. Whatever it is, it's real. That part of the conversation is already over.
For the last 4 years, every time we do podcasts, I have to ask Rob or somebody, hey, can you pull up this news? Can you pull up that? Which way do these guys lean? Can you go back to the timeline of, eventually after asking so many questions, I said, why don't we design the website that we want aggregated? We don't write the articles. We feed all of it in using AI. So 8 months ago, I hired 15 machine learning engineers. They put together our news site called vtnews.ai. What this allows you to do when you go to it, if you go to that story right there that says Trump proposes overtime pay, click on it. It'll tell you how many sources are reporting on this from the left. If you go to the right, Rob, it says left sources, click on it. Those are all the left sources. If I want to go to right sources, those are the two. If I want to go to center, I go there. Now, if I want to go all the way to the top and I want to find out a lopsided story, a story that only one side is reporting on, either the left or the right. So if you notice the first one, will say Zelensky announces release of 49 Ukrainians from Russia. Notice more people on the left are reporting on that than the right. If I go to the middle one, same thing. If I go to the right one, same thing. You can see what stories are lopsided. And if I pick one of the stories, pick the first story, click on a Trump one, proposes overtime tax cuts. To the right on the AI, I can ask any question I want, but click on the first question that has it. It says, what is the political context and potential motivation behind the Trump's new tax cut proposal? Click on the question mark. It explains exactly what the motives are. So for you to use, whether you're doing a podcast, you're in the middle of a podcast, or you just want to know it for yourself, you're busy like myself. And last but not least, this is all AI doing this, so machine learning engineers. Go all the way to the top. I can go to timelines, and see how far back a story goes. Pick the Israel-Palestinian conflict. If I want to go to that and go back and see why are those 2 days a big spike, I'll have Rob pull it over to go to those 2 days with a big spike, and I'll see exactly what happened on that day or the previous day, and many other features vtnews.ai has. So simply go to vtnews.ai. There's a freemium model, there's a premium, and then there's the insider. If you want to have unlimited access to the AI, click on the VTAI Insider. You can now become a member effectively today.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.